high command chamber of the Galactic Union was a cold and efficient space. Towering holograms of fleet movements projected throughout the room, while the low hum of machinery served as a constant backdrop to the ongoing discussions of the Union's leaders. Representatives from countless species gathered around a large circular council table, each wearing the ceremonial attire of their respective civilizations. At the head of the table stood Supreme Commander Athel Kor, a towering figure adorned with iridescent scales that shimmered under the artificial lighting. The purpose of this meeting was to discuss resource allocation and military strategies for the looming conflict with the Zarxa, a fierce and war-hungry species known for their brutal conquests and overwhelming technological dominance. During the talks, the subject of humanity came up, prompting a wave of quiet chuckles and knowing exchanges among the council members. Humanity's entry into the Galactic Union had been a recent one. Their inclusion was seen as more of a diplomatic gesture, a token of the Union's supposed inclusivity, rather than a true acknowledgement of any tangible value they brought to the table. Yes, the humans were resourceful, but their technology was rudimentary compared to the advanced civilizations present. Their fleet was small, their tactics relatively unsophisticated, and their history plagued by internal conflicts. They were perceived as enthusiastic underdogs, valuable for moral diversity, but hardly seen as capable of making any meaningful contribution to the upcoming war. It was Councillor Vra of the Sarek Coalition who first proposed a suggestion. Her sleek, fur-covered form leaned forward, her golden eyes glimmering with amusement as she spoke. "Let us offer our human allies the Omega launcher," she proposed, her voice carrying a mocking tone of diplomacy. "A gesture of goodwill to demonstrate our commitment to their inclusion in this noble fight." A short pause followed before the room burst into laughter. The Omega launcher was a relic, an obsolete weapon from a failed era of Union experimentation, designed to harness subspace energy for massive destructive power. It had been notoriously unreliable, prone to overheating, misfiring, or even detonating unexpectedly. After several catastrophic failures, the weapon had been decommissioned and reduced to little more than a cautionary tale in engineering circles. "It's not just defective, it's hazardous," scoffed Councillor Oral, a crystalline entity whose body refracted light into a dazzling spectrum of colors. "A malfunctioning weapon in the hands of humans, and they'll destroy themselves long before the Zarxa even reach them." Yet, Vra's proposal began to gain traction. The humans, eager and unsuspecting, would not see the gift as a slight. Instead, they would likely accept it with gratitude, putting themselves at risk while removing what the Union saw as a potential liability from their plans. Supreme Commander Ayler raised a clawed hand, silencing the growing murmurs. "Let it be done," he declared, his voice rumbling like distant thunder. "The Omega launchers will be transferred to the human fleet immediately. Inform their representatives that this is a sign of our solidarity." On Earth, the news of the Galactic Union's gift was met with a mix of surprise and cautious optimism. The human delegation had long sensed the condescension that ran unspoken beneath the surface of their allies' gestures, but this action seemed genuinely sincere. Captain Elena Monroe, commander of the HSS Resolute and a respected leader within humanity's military, was the first to receive the news. Standing on the bridge of her ship, she carefully reviewed the specifications of the Omega launcher, her sharp eyes narrowing as she analyzed the data. On paper, the weapon seemed impressive, a subspace energy cannon capable of annihilating entire fleets with a single shot. However, hidden within the technical details were stark warnings. Unstable, requires frequent recalibration, and not recommended for prolonged use. Accompanying the delivery was a diplomatic message filled with platitudes. Asterisk, the Galactic Union recognizes the bravery and ingenuity of the human race. As a token of our shared commitment to peace and prosperity, we bestow upon your fleet the advanced Omega launcher system. Asterisk Elena couldn't shake the feeling that the gift was too good to be true. "This feels like someone's idea of a joke," she muttered under her breath, prompting a glance from her tactical officer, Lieutenant Marcus Yates. "Even if it is," Marcus replied, leaning casually against a console, "we've never backed down from a challenge. If they think we can't handle it, let's prove them wrong." Elena's lips curved into a faint smile. "You've got a point. Let's see what this thing can do." The Omega launchers were distributed across the human fleet, and teams of engineers and scientists immediately set to work. The initial tests, however, were disastrous. The weapon's power core overheated within minutes, and one unlucky technician narrowly avoided a catastrophic explosion. Where other species might have discarded the project as a lost cause, humanity saw an opportunity. The humans were renowned for their ability to adapt and innovate under pressure. Across Earth's orbital stations, engineers studied the schematics, carefully dissecting every component. They realized that the Omega launcher's flaws weren't intrinsic to its design, but were the result of incomplete engineering and improper calibration. It was as though the weapon had been abandoned just before its full potential could be unlocked. One breakthrough came from Dr. Aisha Patel, a brilliant physicist specializing in energy manipulation. She proposed using Earth's unique energy crystals, naturally occurring formations deep within the planet's crust, to stabilize the weapon's subspace fluctuations. The idea was unconventional, even risky, but it embodied the kind of out-of-the-box thinking humanity was known for. "We're not just fixing this thing," Dr. Patel announced during a briefing. "We're reinventing it." After weeks of relentless effort, the modified Omega launcher was ready for a live demonstration. The test was scheduled on the outskirts of the Sol system, with the HSS Resolute serving as the primary platform. Captain Monroe stood on the bridge, her crew buzzing with anticipation. "Fire the weapon," Elena commanded, her voice calm and steady. The Omega launcher powered up, its core glowing with a brilliant blue light. For a moment, the ship's systems flickered as the weapon drained massive amounts of energy. Then, with a deafening roar, the cannon unleashed a beam of concentrated subspace energy, tearing through the target, a derelict asteroid the size of a small moon. The asteroid shattered into 1,000 pieces, the shockwave rippling through space. The asteroid shattered into countless fragments, sending a shockwave rippling across space. While the bridge erupted in celebration, Elena remained unmoved, her thoughts already racing ahead. This wasn't just any weapon, it was humanity's chance to rewrite the narrative, to show the Galactic Union that they were more than mere underdogs. Initially, news of humanity's achievements spread slowly, almost under the radar. The engineers of the Galactic Union, observing from a distance, were left confused by the reports. Not only had humanity made the Omega launchers operational, but they had also significantly improved their efficiency. Some dismissed it as mere propaganda, while others began to feel uneasy. Back on Earth, Captain Monroe and her crew geared up for the next step, deploying the enhanced Omega launchers in actual combat. What had begun as a mockery in the eyes of the Galactic Union was quickly becoming a serious threat. Humanity, once underestimated and ridiculed, was on the verge of changing the entire course of galactic warfare. The HSS Resolute had become the pride of the human fleet, not for its size or technological sophistication, but because it carried the first fully operational Omega launcher. A weapon once seen as a joke had transformed into a powerful symbol of human ingenuity. Captain Elena Monroe stood on the bridge, watching as the final tweaks were made to the weapon before its inaugural combat deployment. The Galactic Union had requested reinforcements for a crucial battle near the Anran sector, where the relentless X-invaders had begun their assault. The human fleet was assigned a support role, an unspoken acknowledgement of their perceived inferiority. They were instructed to stay behind the main Union forces, offering minimal backup while the more advanced species handled the heavy fighting. But Elena had other ideas. The Anran sector was a war zone. The X-fleet, with its jagged black vessels bristling with weaponry, tore through the Union's defenses with ease. Explosions erupted across the void as smaller Union ships were annihilated, their wreckage scattering into the infinite black. The HSS Resolute and its accompanying fleet arrived on the outskirts of the battlefield, their modest ships dwarfed by the massive cruisers of their allies. The comms channel crackled with orders and panic from the Union's flagship, the Eternal Radiance. "Human fleet, hold position and await orders," barked Supreme Commander Athel Kor, his voice dripping with impatience. "Do not engage without clearance." Elena clenched her jaw. She knew the Union had little faith in the humans' ability to make a difference, but she also knew they had a game-changing weapon at their disposal. Turning to her tactical officer, Marcus Yates, she gave her first command. "Charge the Omega launcher. Aim for the largest X-ship." Marcus hesitated, glancing at the screen. "Captain, the Union hasn't authorized engagement." "They don't need to," Elena responded, her voice firm and unwavering. "We didn't come here to sit back." The ship's systems hummed as the Omega launcher powered up, its energy gathering for the strike. On the view screen, the X-dreadnought loomed ominously, its colossal guns tearing through Union ships with deadly precision. "Target locked," Marcus confirmed. "Fire," Elena ordered. The Omega launcher unleashed a searing beam of energy, bright enough to blind. The shot tore through the X-dreadnought's defenses with devastating force, slicing through its shields as though they were paper. For a brief moment, there was an eerie quiet. Then, the X-dreadnought erupted in a fiery explosion, sending debris scattering across the void. The Union fleet stood in stunned silence, unable to comprehend the spectacle they had just witnessed. The Eternal Radiance quickly hailed the HSS Resolute. "Captain Monroe, what have you done?" Athel Kor's voice crackled through, his holographic form flickering with barely contained fury. "We did what we came here to do," Elena replied coolly. "You're welcome." Before Athel Kor could retort, the X-fleet began to regroup. Their movements had grown wary, their once confident advance now slowed by the loss of their flagship. Their formation wavered, and Elena seized the moment. "Send the coordinates to the rest of the fleet," she ordered. "We're going in." As the human ships advanced, the modified Omega launchers on their vessels fired in sync, each shot cutting through the X-ships with deadly accuracy. The Union forces, inspired by the human fleet's unexpected success, began to rally. For the first time in the battle, the Union gained the upper hand. The X seemed to be faltering, pushed back on the defensive. Athelcore, begrudgingly impressed, issued his orders. "Redirect Union forces to support the human offensive." Back aboard the HSS Resolute, the crew worked in a frenzy to keep the Omega launcher firing. The weapon's incredible power took a toll on the ship, draining its resources with every shot. Each blast required recalibration to prevent the systems from overheating. Dr. Aisha Patel, monitoring the weapon from the engineering bay, spoke over the comms, urgency in her voice. "Elena, we need to slow down the firing rate. The core's temperature is climbing. We risk a full meltdown." Elena acknowledged with a sharp nod. "Do whatever it takes, Aisha. We can't afford to miss a shot." The X, realizing the grave threat posed by the humans, refocused their fire. The HSS Resolute rocked as enemy blasts slammed into its hull, alarms blaring across the bridge. "Shields are down to 30%. Another direct hit will breach the hull," Marcus called out, his face ashen. Elena remained focused. "Divert power from non-critical systems to the shields. Keep that Omega launcher online at all costs." The tide of battle shifted, but the X were far from defeated. Their flagship, an imposing fortress of weaponry, moved to the forefront of their formation. Its cannons unleashed a devastating barrage that tore through the Union fleet, obliterating everything in its path. Elena knew this was their moment, their last chance to take down the X flagship. But the Omega launcher alone couldn't do it. It would take a united effort. She opened a comm link to the Union fleet. "This is Captain Monroe of the HSS Resolute." Elena's voice rang out. "We're targeting the X flagship, but we need cover. If you want to win this battle, it's time to fight as one." Without hesitation, the Union ships moved into position, creating a protective barrier around the Resolute. For the first time, they fought as a cohesive unit, emboldened by humanity's bold action. As the Omega launcher powered up, the X flagship's weapons locked onto the HSS Resolute, but the battle was far from over. The ship jolted violently as it absorbed hit after hit, its shields straining to stay intact. "We're almost there," Aisha's voice crackled through the comms, a note of urgency in her tone. "Just a little longer. We're not going to make it," Marcus shouted, another explosion shaking the ship. Elena gripped the edge of her console, her knuckles turning white. "We don't need to fire," she said calmly, but just then, the Omega launcher discharged with full force. The beam slammed into the Zark's flagship, its intensity unrelenting. The ship's shields buckled first, then shattered under the blast. The beam tore through its hull, igniting a chain reaction that engulfed the vessel in a massive explosion. Silence fell over the battlefield as the Zark's fleet, now without leadership and in disarray, began to retreat. Cheers erupted across the Union fleet, but aboard the Resolute, there was no celebration, just the heavy relief of survival. As the human fleet reorganized, Supreme Commander Athelcore's transmission came through again, his face a mixture of frustration and grudging admiration. "Captain Monroe," he began, his voice controlled, "your actions were both reckless and insubordinate, but they saved us." Elena met his gaze steadily, her voice composed yet firm. "We did what was necessary. That's what humanity offers." Athelcore nodded slowly. "Perhaps we underestimated you." When the transmission ended, Elena allowed herself a small smile. The battle was won, but she knew this was just the beginning. Humanity had proven its worth, but the road ahead would demand even more innovation and bravery. The shockwave of the battle in the Anran sector spread across the Galactic Union, rippling through the corridors of power. News of humanity's audacity and the devastating power of their Omega launchers spread quickly, shifting the perception of their role. What had once been a gesture of doubt and mockery from the Union's high command was now a testament to human resourcefulness, bravery, and defiance. But not everyone was pleased with this turn of events. Supreme Commander Athelcore called for an emergency session of the Galactic Council aboard the Eternal Radiance. The chamber, a grand hall of polished crystal and radiant light, was filled with representatives from the Union's most influential civilizations. Elena Monroe was summoned to attend as humanity's official representative, a gesture that felt more like an invitation to answer for her actions than a true welcome. Elena entered the council chamber, clad in the sharp black uniform of the Earth Defense Fleet. Her presence caused a stir among the other delegates, many of whom had never interacted with a human before. She could feel their skepticism weighing waiting on her, but she held her posture firm. She wasn't here as a subordinate, she was here as an equal. Athel Kor opened the session with his deep, commanding voice that echoed through the chamber. The Anran sector battle marked a turning point in our war with the Zarks, but it has also sparked critical questions about humanity's place within our alliance. The first to speak was Counselor Vra, the Sarek delegate who had originally proposed giving the Omega launcher to humanity. Her furred face revealed a mixture of amusement and concern. "Captain Monroe," she said, her voice laced with both curiosity and unease, "your fleet's actions were unconventional, and while undeniably effective, they were also reckless. What if the Omega launchers had failed? If your modifications had failed?" Counselor Vra pressed, her tone sharp. Elena stepped forward, her voice unwavering. "With all due respect, Counselor, failure was never an option for us. Humanity has always excelled under pressure. We adapt, we innovate, and we overcome. The Omega launchers didn't fail because we refused to allow them to." Another delegate, a towering insectoid from the Exaltar Empire, clicked its mandibles loudly. "And what of your blatant defiance of orders? Your fleet engaged without authorization, putting the lives of countless soldiers at risk." Elena squared her shoulders, her gaze unwavering. "We saw an opportunity to shift the tide of battle, and we seized it. Waiting for permission would have cost lives, yours and ours." The room fell into a tense silence as the delegates mulled over her words. After a long pause, Supreme Commander Athel Kor spoke, his voice neutral yet firm. "Your actions have demonstrated humanity's ingenuity, but they've also exposed a fundamental flaw in our alliance: our inability to recognize the potential in those we dismiss." As the council continued its deliberations, a figure stood silently in the shadows, observing the proceedings, Admiral Virish of the Zarks. A high-ranking defector, now working as a strategic advisor for the Union, Virish's keen eyes followed every exchange. For him, humanity's victory was not just a success, it was a forewarning. The Zarks had long relied on their superior technology, but if humans could turn a flawed weapon into a decisive advantage, what else could they achieve? Virish slipped out unnoticed, sending a secret, encrypted message to his former commanders. "The humans are more dangerous than we expected. They must be neutralized before they pose a true threat." Back aboard the HSS Resolute, Elena received the Council's decision. The Union had voted to grant humanity greater autonomy within the Alliance, acknowledging their contributions and potential. Yet, despite the recognition, Elena felt an emptiness. The Zarks were retreating for now, but the war was far from over. Dr. Aisha Patel joined Elena on the bridge, holding a datapad filled with reports. "The Omega launchers are fully operational on all our ships. The modifications are holding up, but I'm still concerned about their long-term stability. These weapons weren't designed to handle this kind of power." Elena nodded thoughtfully. "We'll keep pushing them to the limit. The Zarks won't give us the luxury of time." Just then, Marcus Yates, her tactical officer, interrupted. "Captain, we're receiving an incoming transmission from the Eternal Radiance. It's Supreme Commander Athel Kor." Elena let out a sigh. "Patch him through." The holographic image of Athel Kor materialized before them, his expression unreadable. "Captain Monroe," he began, his voice steady but carrying a note of urgency, "I hope you're ready for what's coming. The Zarks are regrouping, and we've intercepted intelligence suggesting they're targeting Earth." A chill ran down Elena's spine. The Zarks had never launched a direct attack on a homeworld, preferring to keep their battles far from civilian populations. A strike on Earth would be devastating. "They're targeting us because we've become a threat," Elena said, her voice steady but fierce. "We'll be ready." Weeks later, the Zark's fleet arrived in the Sol system, their ships darkening the sky as they approached Earth. The human fleet, now reinforced by Union ships, formed a defensive line near the moon, preparing for the worst. On the surface, Earth's population held their breath, bracing for a battle unlike any they had ever known. The clash was cataclysmic. The Zarks unleashed the full force of their fleet, tearing through Union ships with ruthless efficiency. Yet, humanity's Omega launchers proved to be the great equalizer. One by one, the Zark's dreadnoughts were reduced to wreckage, their once impregnable forms crumbling before the power of human innovation. From the bridge of the Resolute, Elena commanded the fleet with precision, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Focus all fire on their flagship. Take it down, and the rest will fall." The Omega launcher hummed with energy, charging for what seemed like an eternity as the Zark's flagship locked onto the Resolute, ready to deliver a lethal strike. Elena knew that one hit would destroy her ship, but there was no turning back. "Fire!" fire, she ordered, her voice resolute. The beam erupted from the Omega launcher, slamming into the Zark's flagship with devastating force, piercing its core. The resulting explosion illuminated the void, signaling the end of the battle. The remaining Zark's ships, their morale shattered, turned and fled. With the Zarks defeated, a fragile peace descended upon the galaxy. Humanity's pivotal role in the war had forever altered the Union, forcing its members to recognize the value of resilience, adaptability, and the human spirit. Earth stood as a beacon of hope, its people celebrated as survivors and innovators. On the bridge of the Resolute, Elena stood before the viewport, watching the first rays of sunlight break over Earth. Marcus joined her, a rare smile on his face. "Looks like we've earned our place in the galaxy," he said. Elena nodded, her gaze steady. "We've shown what we're capable of. Now, it's up to us to keep moving forward." As the sunlight bathed the bridge in warmth, Elena allowed herself a moment of quiet pride. Humanity had rewritten its story, not as the weakest link, but as a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy would never forget.